In Prefect Cloud, deployments have a version history. The live deployment version is a runnable version of a deployment. A previous version can be made live by rolling back to it.
When a previous deployment version is live, a newer deployment version can be made live by promoting it. Let's start by creating a deployment. In this repository, I have the flow that I want to deploy. My deployment is defined in a Prefect YAML file. In my pull step, I'm providing the repository URL and my commit SHA from my deployment environment, which is created by a GitHub Actions workflow. In my workflow, we check out the repository, set up Python, and then use the official Prefect deploying GitHub action. This action is triggered by pushes to main. Since I recently made a push to main, my GitHub Actions workflow ran and created a deployment in Prefect. Let's take a look at it. When I click on the Versions tab, you can now see that this deployment has its first version. Each deployment version has a name, a message, its own metrics, and a link directly to the code that created that version. Let's give this deployment a run to ensure that it works the way we expect it to. It looks like everything worked. You can see in the link back to the deployment, we also display the version name. Let's make a change to the flow that causes it to fail. Let's also update the version name in our deployment definition. The GitHub Actions workflow will now create a new version of my deployment. Now that this is finished, let's look at the deployment again. This deployment has a brand new version, with the commit message, the deployment name I gave it, and again, a link directly to the code that defined this version of my deployment. Now let's give this deployment a run and make sure that it fails the way we expect it to. It looks like our run failed, with the exception that I raised. Let's go back to the deployment. In your version history, you can individually select each version without rolling back or promoting. This allows you to view the run history for each individual version of your deployment. Typically, to fix the mistakes like this, we'd have to go back to our code, make and push changes, and then wait for our deployment process to run all over again. With deployment versioning, we can simply roll back to a previous working version of our deployment. When clicking the rollback button, we can see all the deployment properties that are going to change when our target version becomes the live version. Version deployment properties include things like descriptions and tags, as well as properties that control execution behavior, like pull steps and jaw variables. Now you can see that the older version of the deployment is the live version. Let's select it and then give it a run. And there we go. This run succeeded. Looking one more time at our version history, we can see that our versions are mapped to specific commits in our Git repository. And when we run them, they execute the code directly from that commit. The same benefits of deployment versioning are available to deployments whose code is stored in Docker images. In this repository, I have another flow that I want to deploy, but this time I'm using my own Docker file to copy that code into a custom-built Docker image. In my GitHub Actions workflow, I check out the repository, set up Python, set up Docker and log into Docker Hub, build and push the image, and then deploy my Prefect flow. Critically, the build and push step has a digest available in its outputs. The Docker image digest is an immutable ID that can be used to pull Docker images regardless of the tag that they're using. This image digest will be used to pin the image version in my deployment definition. In my deployment's job variables, we set the image to my Docker Hub account, my image name, and the image digest returned by the build and push step. Let's commit and push this flow so that we build our image and get our first version of the deployment. Now that our deployment process is finished, let's take a look at the newly created deployment. We can see in the deployment configuration that the image job variable includes the full image digest. Let's give this one a run, just like we did with the other deployment. It looks like the flow already completed successfully. Let's go make a change to the code. We'll do the same breaking change we did before, and once again, update the version name. Now we're building a new version of the image, this time with the broken code in. Cool, let's go back to our deployment. If we take a look at the newly created version, we can see that the image digest has changed. Let's run this one back. As we can see, this failed just like we thought it would. Let's do the same thing we did with the other deployment, and instead of building a whole new image, just roll back the version to one we know works. Once again, we can see that the image digest, which is the main thing that's changing when we do our deployment version rollback. Now let's select our live version and give it a run. And just like that, we've brought our deployment back to a working state. Thanks for watching this video on deployment versioning in Prefect. For more information on this feature or how to get started for free, check out the links in the description below.